father while he was blind on his deathbed to take his brother's birthright. So you know the rest of the story. Esau found out. He wanted to kill him. Jacob ran away. Before he came back, he had the eve of his arrival. He was very, very scared because Esau was out there to get him. And then he had a full night of prayer, and then he wrestled with God. That's when he ended up with a broken hip and the name Israel. The name Israel means strives with God. So that's a quick background about Jacob. When we read the part for Genesis 37:2, this is the history of Jacob. This is what the verse says. This is the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock. So why? So now, I mean, it might not seem like a big deal, but back in the day when you spoke of someone's lifeline, you start with the eldest. You go with the eldest. He wasn't the first son. He wasn't the second. He was the 11th. So why are we starting with Joseph? Jacob wouldn't have wanted it any other way anyways. This is how he wanted it to be. This is how Jacob would have wanted it to be, because Jacob favored Joseph. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Favoritism as parents. Jacob favored Joseph. Genesis 37:3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. Ouch. So obvious. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his children. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if one of us nowadays, you have 2 or 3 kids, and you say, I'm going to call you out, he loves Manny more than, no, I'm just kidding. I love Juliana more than Joseph. Or can you imagine? So we all know that favoritism is wrong, and it's not really, it's hurtful. But unfortunately, it's not very unusual. And when you stay with families more and more, you start to notice it easier. You can notice who the favorite is in the household. And if it's that obvious to a stranger, imagine to your own child. I'm not saying everybody is falling into it, but it's very, very common. A recent study by the Survey Center of American Life showed 40% of Americans with siblings believe that their parents had a favorite child. So they spoke to all these children, and 40% of them, they believe that absolutely there's a favorite. Now, yes, we're laughing because it's children. It's all kids talk. But it's true. That is a true feeling. It's a real feeling. That's how they feel. They feel like they're not the favorite. 0% in that study, 0% of the parents think that they do have a favorite. But 40% of the kids would disagree. So, let alone Egyptians, by the way. This was American Egyptians. I mean, that takes it to a whole new ball game. El walad. Habib al-Baba. Or el walad. Like, let's take it to a very... Honestly, you don't understand. It's very common in our community. And when I'm sure in high school, Sarah has heard some comments, Marina's heard some comments, or Sani in middle, or Minnie or Carol. I'm sure you all heard comments, but I personally have heard multiple comments, not just from high school, but from middle school and younger. The kids think that they're not the favorite. They don't just think it, they know it. It's like a hard fact. They would come to me, oh, no, I'm not the favorite. They make comments like, oh, I'm not the favorite. Mom would never do that to me. Dad would never do that to me. They'll only do that for my brother. It's a true issue that they're feeling, and there are consequences for it. We have a few situations where girls came up and expressed deep agony because of that issue, because they feel like they're not the favorite. The whole load is on them. All the expectations are on them, and they don't get any of the good attention. They only get the negative. So it's a true feeling. Um, so if your child is still wondering whether or not they're the favorite, that's a good thing. You're not obvious. But unfortunately, for those kids, they're hurt. And unfortunately for Jacob's kids, it was obvious. It was visible. It was very obvious that Jacob had a favorite, and he was blunt, and it was hurtful. So we are going to talk about it from the brother's perspective, the hurt. So, and even though we may believe that we are 100% fair, and we don't have a favorite in the household, and there's no way, not me, some would laugh and say favoritism is nonsense for kids. Think about the kids that you have that require more attention. So maybe one kid is the younger one, and they're still making a lot of mess, and they're still so cute, and they're still getting all this attention. Naturally, you give him a lot more attention. And that could be translated into favoritism from the older sibling. We could, without noticing, we could add that burden on the older sibling. Or if we have a sick child, or a child that went through trauma, or then you feel like you have to give that sibling all of your attention, or most of your attention. And then we kind of put the other sibling on the side. Or we expect that the other sibling would understand, even if they're not old enough to. We just expect them to. Then this is what's going to happen. And that's part of it. And that can translate into favoritism in our hearts as well. So it might start with attention, but then it can translate into favoritism in our heart. So these are great excuses to have a favorite. If they're cute, if they're younger, if they're always getting in trouble, or if you have the overachiever that always has all these reward ceremonies that you have to go to and you have to attend to, and the other one is lazy and doesn't participate in any sports, so you kind of give him more attention. These are all great excuses, but Jacob also had an excuse or a reason. For loving Joseph more, his excuse was he was his son of his old age. When we dig deeper in the story, we also discover that Joseph is his first son by Rachel. And him and Rachel had a very difficult marriage, and they had infertility issues. So that's a reason why, right? Also, Rachel was his favorite wife. He had a favoritism issue. He wasn't trying to hide it. She was his favorite wife. So he was his favorite son. Let's go back to Genesis 37:3. So also, he made him a tunic of many colors. So not only did he favor him, so now when we favor someone of our children, we're going to at least try to be discreet. Don't rub it in. But he didn't. He made him a tunic of many colors. Let's talk about the tunic. The tunic marked the owner of the tunic as the future leader of the household. So back then, when someone is gifted such gift, it marks you as the leader. He's the 11th son. Imagine if I talk to my older brother, 4 years older. It's not the same, guys. It's back then it was even worse. Now we have a hierarchy respect to our older siblings, and it's obvious. But back then it was even more. It was like a law. So he made him a robe to mark him as the future leader of the household. So this usually was an honor for the firstborn. This was the honor for the firstborn. Not that Jacob would care, because he stole his brother's birthright, which was also for the firstborn. So Jacob made him a tunic of many colors, skipped 11 children, and went straight to Joseph. In Hebrew, this is not translated. It's hard to translate, so it's a tunic of many colors or ornate robe. But it's not like the picture that we see. It's not like the kid's picture. It's actually royalty. It's not just some colors. It's made of really expensive material. It's got really expensive jewels. It's handmade. It's made of velvet or whatever, that royalty material. And it showed back then, not just royalty, high status and favoritism between classes. So if this is what you're wearing, it puts you in a different class than the rest. The word that we leave out in Hebrew, that's not usually translated, is called pasim. It means wrist and ankle. So the coat wasn't just elaborately bedazzled. It was also up to the wrist and up to the ankles. So what does that mean? It means that it wasn't made for working people. It's made for royalty. So here comes the 17-year-old Joseph, almost the youngest of all his men-grown siblings, already off the field, off his work field, and treated like a prince. Imagine how that would make his siblings feel. In those days, the working outfits were shorter and they were sleeveless. So again, we can infer that Joseph was taken out of the work field. He was treated like a prince. He's the one that's, spoiled. It's like going to Starbucks wearing a tuxedo. It's evident he was wearing it around. So if you would go to Starbucks wearing a tuxedo, it would be us imagining Joseph going to work with that robe, which is not happening. He wasn't working, that's for sure. So he didn't only favor him, he made it obvious. He rubbed it in. Joseph's coat wasn't designed for work, which set him apart, right? So the father gave it to him to tell the world that Joseph is special. Joseph is not for working. He didn't have to work like the rest of his brothers did. Another element of the story that we ignore is that he made it. Jacob made it. So he is a father of 12 boys and then all the women, all the girls. He was very wealthy and all the responsibilities that come with that. Yet he took the time to make it for Joseph. He didn't go pick it up on Black Friday. He didn't ask someone to pick it up. He didn't ask someone to make it. It specifically says that he made it for him. And this was not customary for men in those days. So his investment in that robe is not what we just tell a kid in a Sunday story. He made him a robe of many colors. Yay. No, this actually speaks volume. It speaks volume of the coat. It speaks volume of how Jacob feels towards Joseph. And it speaks volume of how the siblings would have felt also. Like he spent all this time and effort. What other time did he have for the rest? Nothing. He was very overwhelmed by Joseph. So did you notice what happened when we read that led Joseph to be coronated with the robe? If you ask his brothers, they would tell you that their father gave it to him because he snitched, because he's a tattletale. Joseph was a tattletale, and that's why he got a robe. So he brought a bad report. That's what it says, 37:2. Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. So apparently Joseph went to work with them in the family business, which was shepherding, and he saw one was sleeping. We can only infer, right? They were either sleeping or not watching the sheep from the wolves, like they were letting them be, or maybe selling the sheep and pocketing the money. Nowadays, they might be scrolling and not doing their work, so something happened. And then whatever it was, Joseph went home and filed a report. So think about it. If you have kids, and one of you is a tattletale, one of them, and he always comes and says, "Mommy, he's not doing his homework, he's scrolling on his phone." What am I supposed to say? You say, that's none of your concern. Nobody asked you to tell. Or you say, what were you doing paying attention to him? Doesn't sound like you were paying attention either, right? You're going to correct the telling behavior. Not Mina. So if someone is telling, you want to correct that behavior because it's not right. So can you imagine, like we tell our kids nowadays, snitches get stitches? You say snitches get stitches, but back in the day, they would tell the parents, after listening to Joseph's story, would tell their kids snitches get thrown in a well or sold to slavery or killed. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Snitching is not okay. On a positive note, what could have been happening, what could have been done. What we could do better, Mina Khalil, is instead of applauding snitching, we can redirect the behavior. So if I have a child who is always telling, I can redirect the behavior. I can teach him to use it in a loving leadership way. So if they say maybe they're not doing their homework, then I could say, hey, why don't you be a good leader? Why don't you be a good example? Why don't you go talk to them? If you're telling me because you want me to get them in trouble, that's inappropriate. That's not okay. But if you're telling me because you care, because you want to spend time with them, then go tell them, hey, why don't you finish your work? Because mom said if we both finish on time, we can have some whatever, PlayStation time or whatever it is. Ice cream. Carol gives ice cream. Give ice cream. So we can always correct. But Jacob didn't really do that. He went right to working on the robe, right? He obviously wanted to reward Joseph for his integrity, but there was no wisdom in promoting Joseph to senior manager, okay? He put him in a robe, and his job thereafter was go check on your brother and come back and give me a report. He's asking for it. He's putting his child in jeopardy. So that was really not necessary. Can you imagine? Mommy, Joey's not doing his homework. Great job, Juliana. So proud of you for telling. Okay, so that's what happened. So afterwards, hold on, I lost it. Let's see, where were we? Okay, so sibling rivalry is real. And it happens, it's been real from generation to generation. It's happening today. Siblings fight. Siblings can develop hate for each other. And siblings can fight over money. It can go, like we know grown-ups that take each other to court for inheritance, and they just have no sympathy for each other. There's no love between them. That all starts young. It starts now, and it's our responsibility as parents to instill that in them. When we find that a child is so focused on themselves and on what their achievements are, we redirect. When we find that a child is so focused on telling because they want to get the other one in trouble, or they're telling because they want to feel better, we redirect. Not because for their own benefit, of course, but also for the sake of the relationship, the siblings' relationship. Siblings' rivalry is dangerous, and we've seen it happen from Cain and Abel to Esau and Jacob himself. He had a problem with his sibling. Out of all people, Jacob should have been the one to try to avoid that from happening again in his home, from trying to teach his children to love and care for each other and not cause such issues. But he was just blinded by the favoritism. He was overwhelmed. So it's no surprise the brothers didn't take it lightly. They weren't very happy with Jacob and with Joseph. Let's read 37:4. They hated him. It's a big word. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and couldn't speak peaceably to him. They didn't just hate him because he was the annoying little brother, or because he was taking their stuff, or because he was destroying their stuff. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and couldn't speak peaceably to him. So the instillment of hate here was the father's favoritism. It can go that far. It can go that far. And without noticing, you're just being a good dad to Joseph. No harm done. Without noticing, you could be a stumbling stone for the other 11. So at first, they thought that they loved Joseph more. But then, after the and getting him off the field and treating him like royalty, they now see it. It's evident. The hate is there. When they say peaceable, can't speak peaceable to him, it means it could have turned into like verbal abuse. Like they were aggressive. They were aggressive, they were abusive. So he also put Joseph in a very tricky situation. But they were hurt. They were hurt, and their feelings were spilling over, and they just couldn't control it, and they didn't have the right guidance. And Joseph was 17, so where is he going to learn the wisdom from, right? His father gave him a full big head. You're the best of the best. You're better than all of them. So he didn't stride wisely. Even though he knew they were angry, he wasn't striding wisely. He was saying it like in their face. You are all going to bow down to me. I think it was Abuna Dawood, or I'm not sure which one. I would think it was Abuna Dawood. He goes, "طب ليه يا ابني؟ ما خلاص." Why are you telling them? Like, what's the point of that? But he doesn't have the guidance. He doesn't have the guidance, and he's filled with all this attention and favoritism. He's gotten a big head, and he's just excited to shove it in everybody's face. So yeah, he would go, and he will tell them, you will all bow down to me. All 10 of his elder, angry, verbally abusive brother. He has some courage. He has some courage. Huh?
It's probably his way of taking it back at them. That's his only way.
That's right, because otherwise, were you the younger sibling or something? Was that the way you took it back? Yes, that was his only tool to get back at them, because they were all bigger. So he figured, oh yeah, well, I have a coat of many colors. That's right. And that's what happened. From this point on, it spiraled down, as we know. The brothers plotted to kill Joseph, and the day they got a chance, Joseph was actually going that day because Jacob told him, go check on your brothers and what they're doing, and then come back and tell me the report. Now, is that a wise decision for a father? Was that very wise? He's sending him to go tell on his 10 older brothers who already feel that way, and asking him to come tell on them or to give him a report. Maybe I'm wrong, Abuna. I'm not sure if this was customary in the olden days, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. Alhamdulillah. I'm not getting So the brothers plotted to kill him. And of course, he came to the field, and with his beautiful coat of many colors, they can see him from a mile away. It's very shiny and colorful. So here comes the dreamer. That's right. Here comes the dreamer. Ta'alaba. So they were determined to kill him, but they didn't want to get their hand with blood, mess with blood. That was customary. It was a big deal back in the day. So they decided to do otherwise. And actually, the oldest brother here showed leadership and compassion to his younger brother, even though he should be the most to be upset. All of this should be his. All of the attention should be his. The coat should be his. But instead, he was the one that intervened and saved Joseph. So when he arrived at the camp, you know what happened. They beat him up. They took the coat, and they threw him in a dry well, and then they put goat blood on it, gave it back to Jacob, and they sold him. They sold him for 20 shekels. That's the amount for a slave's helper. Not even a slave. 20 shekels of silver was the second slave rate for slavery. His dad, of course, thought he was killed by a wild animal, and what a plot twist. All of this beautiful dreams that he had and all of the dreams Jacob had for him were all torn. And it would have been preventable. In my opinion, it could have been preventable. So all of this is included in the scripture so it can teach us the wisdom and the consequence of our actions. God has a plan, and sometimes we feel the need to intervene to make it happen. Like when Abraham and Sarah knew they were going to have a kid. Okay, go, have Hagar so you can have a kid. Okay, he already told you you're going to have a kid. Let him work in his own timing. There was no need to intervene, human intervention, just to speed up and get to the plan, right? We already knew that Jacob was going to have the birthright, right? It was said from the beginning, Jacob was going to have the birthright. It said, Um, the elder will serve the younger. So it was already said. There was no need for human intervention and deceit that only brought agony to his entire household. Jacob, after he deceived his brother and father, he went and worked for who? Laban, and he tricked him for his entire lifetime. So his entire lifetime, he was working and he was getting deceived one time after the other. And that's because of human intervention. God's plan is perfect. It's perfect timing, but when we intervene, sometimes it's because we don't really trust his plan very much. We don't have the strongest faith, and we don't know, we want it faster, we want it now, and then we intervene, and it kind of gives us those plot twists that we keep seeing. So later on, obviously the famine happened. Jacob sent his sons, and they found Joseph as the leader, right? Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face. And they said, Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive." So, understanding what God has planned for us is going to help us allow the plan to go smoothly and not disrupt it with our human intervention. Joseph was able to forgive and forgive his brother's sin in the past, and instead of payback, he offered love and he offered forgiveness, right? So that's him understanding. Us as parents could apply that because we also had experiences. We don't need to only think from a parent perspective. You as a child, you grew up in a household. Did you experience favoritism? Did you feel that a sibling was getting more of the attention? Did you feel like you were carrying a lot more load? We all had our experiences. We all went through tough times. A lot of us have gone through hurt and trauma and other things. So we can take this into account when we are then treating our own children. So Joseph did a good thing by ignoring all the hurt, learning from it, seeing God's wisdom, and applying it towards his brothers, right? When he didn't have to. So we learn from these examples that human nature and lack of patience and lack of total trust in God's promise, we intend to intervene inappropriately sometimes, which adds to those plot twists that we keep seeing, right? All right, so I'm going to wrap up. I'm sorry, it took too long. I'm going to wrap up with just three things to highlight. First of all, favoritism is a sin. I know we view it as favoritism is not okay. It's going to cause siblings rivalry. It's going to, destroy your children's emotions. No, it's actually a sin. In Romans 2:11, New King James Version, "For there is no favoritism in God." There is no favoritism in God. James 2:9 says, "But if you show favoritism, you sin, and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers." It's very clear. Favoritism is not just a bad trait, it's a sin. It's impossible to love someone too much. It's impossible. You can love everyone so much, but it's very possible that you love others poorly, right? So through the story, we learn that Jacob knows how to love. Obviously, he knows how to love. He has that in him. But he showered Joseph with the love, and he deprived others from it. And therefore, he didn't love any of them well. Because he did Joseph a disservice for putting him through all of that, right? He put him through a lot of challenges. So it's important to love everybody well. Loving our children doesn't mean that we treat them all the same. It doesn't have to be exact cookie cutter, okay? They're different. And people love requires honoring their differences. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the book Five Love Language, and there's many of them, right? If you know the person's language, love language, that's what you give. You invest. One child loves reward, I give him reward. My other child loves one-on-one attention, I give him one-on-one attention. So you learn their differences and you love them the way they want to be loved so they can be filled. Because that's another mistake. One child loves candy and the other doesn't, and I'm giving them both candy. Who's going to feel loved? The one that loves candy. The other one is going to feel like you don't know me at all. You're not even giving me attention. You're not giving me the attention I need, right? So we have to love them with their differences. The second thing is don't provoke your children. What is it in Arabic? It's funny. لا تغيظوا ابنكم. هيفشلوا. أي قالت له هيفشلوا. Do not provoke your children. Ephesians 6:4. And you fathers, it's addressing fathers because that was just a trait back then, but it's for all parents. And you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Okay, so provoke means irritation to a very high degree, which is what Jacob put his kids through. All 10 of them were provoked to the point of irritation. He was a stumbling stone. They were provoked to the point of irritation to a very high degree. So, yeah, there's no question. His favoritism definitely led to provoke. This was unnecessary burden on Joseph also. Joseph had a huge burden to carry, fighting 10 older siblings and trying so hard to fill the shoes that his father is making him walk in. That was a big burden. So the wise use of his time should have been distributed evenly. That's the wise use of our time is to distribute it evenly. Even if you have a child that requires more work or more attention, or a child who's sick that needs more time at home and attention, you have to take a step back and make sure you're filling the other child's cup. Because that's what leads to resentment when they grow up. And my parents always say it. I'm sure your parents always said it. إحنا مش قاعدين لكم. It's them. It's the siblings. It's the brothers and sisters that are going to be each other's backbone. So you either nurture the relationship now with a lot of love and a lot of connection, or you're going to be giving them a really hard task to deal with when they grow up. And they're going to be lonely, and they're not going to have their brother. They're going to be resentful. That's a lot of emotions to deal with. So the wise thing to do is encourage instead of provoke, and we need to think critically about our actions because all of it has long-term impact on our children. And the last thing is with God, the story is never over until it's over. So Jacob made mistakes raising his children. They all paid for it, but with God's grace, even their horrible situation was redeemable. And you probably remember the rest of the story. You're right. Joseph was sold into slavery, and he was great, and he loved them, and he treated them with love. Any questions? I know I took a little longer, but other than Mina Khalil, any questions? Say it without the mic first. I have to approve. I know you have a question. Tell me.
I don't know, from my experience, I'm surprised only 40% of Americans would say that they have favoritism because it is so natural for all of us to have this. If mom and dad don't take my side, then they're favoriting the other one. And I've seen this between, my parents were very, very they really wanted to make sure that we all don't feel like anyone is more better than the other. But yeah, between my sister and I always say, Mom, they love you more. No, they love you more. And my mom's answer is always into الاتنين زفت. So
Neither is a great answer to the conclusion of today's sermon.
But what I'm saying is it feels impossible to say, to be able to convince them both that we love you equally, but there's a time for this and a time for that. When it's sick, I have to spend more time. Little, I have to give them more attention, etc. There has to be some kind of a boundary, and some kind of a balance, not a boundary. And what is it?
Okay, that's a really good question. Aslan. Okay, so the question is, he, he thinks, yeah, he thinks and don't love either ونخلص, but no. So the question was, it's very hard to show that evenness and to show that you're fair between all your siblings because it's hard and some do require time, especially if they're sick and all of that. So like I said earlier, yes, there is a boundary and there's a consequence to our action, but you can always walk them through it. So take the opportunity as a leadership learning opportunity. Give them attention in a different way. So for example, you said one of your kids is sick, so naturally you're gonna give this one more attention right now. Include the other one. Explain why you're doing it. For Joseph, when he went to tell on his brothers, this was a good opportunity for Jacob to say, hey, let's be humble. Let's think of the bigger picture. Let's be good examples. Instead of coming to tell or whatever, like be discreet, it would have been a good opportunity to teach. So if one of your kids is sick and you have to spend more time, include the other one. Help them love their sibling. Help them see that the siblings need that attention, and therefore they should also give it to them. So, for example, when Juliana is sick, we don't go out or we don't do this trip. We have to explain to Joey, your sister comes first. If you're sick, we would do the same for you. Would you like it if you were sick and we just drop you off and we take her on to Busch Gardens adventure? No, we're a family, we stick together, we have to show each other love, and you teach them to love each other. It's not favoritism at this time, it's just care. So if you are gonna do it with love and you're not really, the problem you're talking about is deep down, there is favoritism. And deep down, kids sense it, and they know it. And they take every opportunity to catch it and say, I knew it. But if you're constantly including them in your decision making, constantly explaining yourself, don't assume they're gonna understand. Take them and speak to them to their level. This is what we're doing, and this is why, and this is what I need you to do. And then they're gonna learn to show love, not feel left out. You know what I mean? Thank you. Did that answer, or did I veer off? Can you, now you can. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Sorry if I bored you. Here's Buna.
Thank you so much, and it was very needed and very important. May God bless you. So I'm going to take a break till 8:30. We'll start this at 8:30 sharp. So you have كده some time to be on your own praying or reviewing the lecture. May God bless you. May God bless. Thank you so much, Ramadan.